Thank you, Dan, and you, Shields, for allowing me to come up here and speak. I'm not usually the spokesperson for the foundation, but Scott Neal, the co-founder, is a good friend of mine. And, he just returned from Afghanistan. He's out now debriefing down at SOCOM in Tampa in Washington, D.C. Scott and I started a foundation a few years back with my wife, Teresa, and recognizing some of the things that a lot of our returning vets were coming back with. In World War II, and Korea, and Vietnam, it was called shell shock or battle fatigue. We started to recognize it as something that I recognized in my own shooting back in 1989, and some of the guys I was with, and it was PTSD. Now, we know that a lot of our guys get wounded by firearms and knives, handgun, vehicle accidents. There's always maybe an after effect of that. And when I had my shooting back in 1989, it took 4 months to go to grand jury. It was D.A. Johnson's first homicide by cop. And I went through a process. And in that process, I started to see where my support had come from. It was from a lot of guys from the 4-4, the 4-6, the 5-2, and throughout the rest of the city. And I decided at the end of the year, after being interviewed by a lot of the press of what I went through, to write a letter. And I drafted up a letter with John Wilberg, my PBA delegate. I sent that letter to Phil Caruso. That letter helped to inspire the MAP program, Member Assistance Peer-to-Peer, which later blossomed into, with Bill Janae, Papa. Just recently, Teresa and I and Scott Neal, along with Bill Janae and Glenn Garamella, were able to introduce Papa to the Veterans Administration. It's slowly starting to take fruition. It's part of the dream that I have, to see that cops help cops, veterans help veterans. And I'm overwhelmed by starting to see it take fruition with the military now, and see these guys get help. And it's all blossoming out of what we do for each other. And I want to thank you for allowing me to be a part of this tonight. But I have several challenge coins here, and one is from 3-star General John Mulholland, who's speaking tomorrow night at New York Law School. He's a very good friend of mine. He's the general in charge of SOCOM down U.S. Army, soon to be. Maybe I should keep that on the press. But and another challenge coin from Delta Force. Another challenge coin from SOCOM itself. The best challenge coin that I ever carried in my entire career was the challenge coin that I got from Chaplain Collegian. It was the pocket cross that I carried my entire career.
Teresa Miller, everybody. It's easy. I neglected to remember our captain and vice president, our chairman of the board of trustees, that is Eric Hernandez, captain. He is a 700. Unfortunately, board members out here, I go home as I continue, but the next presentation is one that's going to be very interesting, and the history behind it, again, is, I'm not going to take anything away from this. I'd like to call up retired detective first grade, Randy Jurgensen.
Good evening. We all know by now, on April 14, 1972, Patrolman Phil Cardillo, while coming to an aid of a cop in trouble, lost his life. Over the next 10 years from that day, there were more investigations by the Manhattan District Attorney's Office, the New York City Police Department, the PPA conducted one, the Court of Appellates, finally a special prosecutor's office investigated this case, which is a true tragedy. Several articles in the New York Times, in Time magazine, books were written about this. Actually, on November the 4th, Blue Bloods did a very, very poor imitation of what happened to Phil Cardillo on April 14, 1972. I was one of the people who wrote a book. I'm proud to say in the book that I wrote, or what appeared in other books and articles, it was, they, the police department, didn't do this. They, the police department, were ordered out of the mosque. They did this. They didn't do that. The book that I wrote, which took me 15 years, I wasn't about to say they. I was going to name the names where possible and put it in the book as to who did what and who didn't do what. About 7 years ago, this organization was remembering the families of slain police officers, and it was being held on the Intrepid. And one of the families was the Cardillo family. And his wife said to me, "Randy, when are you going to finish that book?" Immediately after that, I bore down and I finished the book within 9 months. As the book was coming out and it goes into galley forms, Police Commissioner Kelly asked if he could read the book. I did. After that, we had a meeting, and he said to me, "What can I do to help in the Phil Cardillo case? Whatever it is, please put it down in a letter." I went to the former Assistant District Attorneys, one who's with us here tonight, John Van Lint, and James Harmon, and I asked them to write the letter to the police commissioner about what could be done, if anything, regarding the Phil Cardillo case. The letter didn't make it into the hard copy, but it made it into the paperback. And as soon as the police commissioner got that letter, he responded by assigning the major case squad to investigate, to take a fresh look at all of the investigations that had gone on. Well, I think you certainly can appreciate that by then the case was 35 years old. These detectives set about finding records, finding property, finding suspects, finding witnesses. This took for about 2 to 2.5 years. Every precinct, every division, every borough, there was something regarding the Phil Cardillo case, scattered throughout Manhattan and some of it in Queens. Once they put it all together, and the file cabinet stands this high, they read it, sorted it out, put it together, and then they began to go and interview witnesses that were still alive, witnesses that are in jail, witnesses that were out of state. All during this time, major case law detectives would call myself, the former Assistant District Attorneys John Van Link and James Harmon down to show progress in the case. At these meetings, Police Commissioner Ray Kelly did attend when he was available. Some of these meetings, we were asked to go to Coney Island, where they had found a slip of paper, and they read it. They followed up with every single thing that you could think of. It has taken them 5 years to do this investigation. And what I saw through this 5 years from these detectives was the reverence and the respect that they had for this case and still do. I would like Detective Willie Donahue to come up to the podium. Obviously, this is an active and still ongoing investigation, so I cannot speak about it, and I'm sure he won't be able to either. I'm saying to you, if these detectives are representative of the detectives that we have on the job today, we're in good hands. Willie, the former president of the Shields, William Bill Kalajian, who was the chaplain at the time of the shooting of Phil Cardillo, a very outspoken one, I might add, and the present president of the Shields, Randy Kaplan, would like to present you with something.
Well, the Reverend Kalajian, actually, as soon as you don't know, although all of you should know this, was a chaplain for 40 years with the NYPD. 40 years.
You know, it's a small world. A little while, when I first told about you could get up to eat and table 1, 2, 3 and so forth, this handsome gentleman came up here and he said to me, you know, back in 1986, back in 1986 you did my father's funeral. His father was a lieutenant, right? Yeah.
If I could, Sergeant Bernine sends his thanks. He was unable to come. We're very appreciative to the board for this award. He's a little under the weather. But this case revolves around 3 people, and I cannot take any credit for that. First of all, Mr. John Van Link, could he stand up so everybody could please see him? He's retired ADA. Also retired ADA John Harmon. He's not here tonight, but he did most of that work too. I'm very ashamed. Randy, come here, Randy. Hey, you, Randy. This whole case is Randy, and I think everybody should know that. And he's kept us alive all these years. When we get to look at the case that we did, you can see the amount of respect we have for Randy for what he has done. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's an honor to be here with you tonight. I know a lot of the people that are involved in this organization and were involved with the investigation that we did many, many years ago. As Randy's indicated to you, next year will be the 40th anniversary of this particular case. It's a very sad anniversary in many ways because of what happened that day and what subsequently happened. Tonight is sort of a reunion of that case. Jamie Ferguson, one of your honorees, was a 7-year-old son of Detective Barney Ferguson, who was a homicide detective that I dealt with in those days. Ray Kelly, who is the police commissioner, was an anti-crime sergeant on patrol outside of the mosque. Randy was involved in the riot that erupted right after the mosque and was knocked unconscious. And I was, believe it or not, a 27-year-old assistant district attorney going up to investigate what apparently at that time was thought of as a assault. One of the things that was never really brought out in the case over the years was that Officer Cardillo was not expected to die. I didn't even know what the extent of his wounds were until I went to St. Luke's Hospital that night. I met with the doctor who was finishing the operation, and he told me that he had been shot in the intestinal area. As many of you know, that's an extremely bad type of wound for a number of reasons, even to this day with the medical advances that we have. In any event, the case went on for a number of years. The major case squad, one of whom you've honored tonight, as well as several other detectives, have continuously worked on the case. While I have this opportunity, I would like to just go back a little bit into the bad old days of the 1970s and sort of give you an idea of what things were like. One of the statistics that I found that happened in that period was between the time of this incident in 1972 and 1992, a 20-year period, there were 37,000 people murdered in New York City. Again, that's not only again, but that's a fairly startling number, at least to me. And it meant that the city was averaging between 1,500 and 2,000 homicides per year. In 1990, I believe, that number went to 2,200 in 1 year in New York City. What was also startling to me about those statistics is the fact that a large number of those homicides, in fact, the leading county was New York County, Manhattan, whereas you might have expected it to be Brooklyn or the Bronx. Brooklyn because of its population and the Bronx because of its poverty. It was not, it was in Manhattan. That number has dropped in 2008 from an average of 2,000 murders a year to 500. And I think that's a credit to all of you who are active in law enforcement and especially in New York City. That's a dramatic drop in the crime rate. And one of my theories is that society basically only has two defenses: the army, or the military, and the police. And if either or both of those defenses break down, chaos erupts. And one of the events that proved my little theory correct was what happened in Iraq when both the military and the police totally broke down after the Iraqi war. The country erupted into chaos, and it's taken as many years as we've been in Iraq to restore that order. Finally, I'd like to just make one comment about Detective Barney Ferguson, who is Jamie's father. I first met Detective Ferguson, Barney, on the very first homicide he ever handled. And it was somewhat of a tragic case. It didn't turn out to be really a homicide. It was two Irish immigrants, both of whom were illegal, were getting on a subway at 59th Street. First guy got on fine. The second guy tried to get on, got his arm caught in the door. The train continued down through the platform into the tunnel with this poor guy hanging out. And, of course, he got smashed into the wall and was killed. And because of their Irish background, my boss, John Keenan, who was also Irish, said, "You've got to get an Irish detective. We'll assign Barney Ferguson." And that's how I met. And one of the things that I found really interesting about working with Barney was the fact that wherever he worked, he took over. He took over completely. And the first time I met him, I was either out on a homicide report. I came back to my office, and he was sitting behind my desk answering the phone. And the phone would ring continuously with people asking for Barney Ferguson. One of the calls I got, and I don't know if you're aware of this, but one of Barney's side jobs in the police department was president of the Emerald Society, and he would run trips all around the world for members of the Emerald Society. And I got this call, it's a true story, from a guy who had an accent, and he was asking for Mr. Ferguson. And I said, "Well, who are you?" And he said, "I'm the bursar." I said, "The bursar?" He said, "Yeah, I'm with the QE2, and I want to talk to Mr. Ferguson about the upcoming trip." I said, "This is the Homicide Bureau. We're not supposed to be booking trips." So, that's how I met him. Finally, I'd like to just, again, thank you all. I'm not going to go into all of the details in the Watts case. You probably know as much or more than most people involved in that case. The case was a terrible tragedy. We did ultimately indict two people for the homicide. You probably know that they were subsequently acquitted, not through any lack of effort, but it was extremely difficult in those days to convict anybody of anything. And it was a tribute, I think, to all of the police who worked on it, especially Randy and today the Major Case Squad. I hope that the case is not totally over. There's one more avenue that we may be able to explore, but that's down the road. Again, thank you very much.